All right, so this part of the Book of Mormon that we are in now, starting in, it's Mosiah 29 to Alma 4. During this time, so Mosiah kind of ended the reign of kings and implemented the elect judges as kind of the government of the people. And so we're kind of talking about that.
They saw the effect of what a wicked king
could do. Yeah. Yes. And so this next section in Come Follow Me kind of talks a little bit about that. It says, I can be a positive influence in my community. And this is specifically talking about chapters Mosiah 29, 11 through 27, and Alma chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. But it kind of goes through how that all came about, how the reign of the judges came about. But 5 years after the judges had been implemented, there came a man named Mosiah, and he kind of stirred up the people and got people together wanting him to be their king. But the problem is he was wicked, and he wanted to take away the rights of the member and the privileges of the members of the church. And if he did come into power, he would have done that and taken away the freedoms of the members of the church at that time. And so they all kind of came together in bodies, and it talks about that here in this section. And it kind of talks about religious freedom and how important that is, and how Mosiah sought to deprive the people of their rights and privileges of the church. So the questions that it asks specifically, it says, have you noticed religious rights being threatened in your nation or community? And what do you learn from the Nephites to the way that they responded to this threat? And that's in Alma chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. So we kind of want to talk a little bit about that and what we can learn from them and how we can use that example in being better members of our community and standing up for right.
Yeah, I think this is, wanting to hit on those questions, but I think that this is almost a dilemma. Like, I didn't want to say the word dilemma, but I kind of feel like it needs to be said, because there's this idea or this conversation that happens a lot amongst religious groups, not just including members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What is our role as a religious group of people who also live in a world that is governed by laws and policy and different things like that? And so we have the idea of separation of church and state, and then also being a religious person in a civil society, and just kind of what is our role? What is our role in the community? What is our role as a peacemaker? What is our role of being a influence of positivity? And I think first and foremost, it happens almost every election cycle, not just presidential, community election cycles. We're encouraged by the leaders of our church to get involved in the caucus meetings and different meetings. And so I think it's first important to acknowledge that we as a religious body have a responsibility to our civil body, like to the communities that we live in, and that there's a responsibility for us to be heard and be involved.
Well, it says here in verse 5 of Alma chapter 2, it says, and it came to pass that the people assembled themselves together throughout all the land, every man according to his mind. And so they physically got together to talk about where they stood with Mosiah and everything. But in our cases, we do have physical meetings that we can go to. Well, not right now necessarily, but like caucuses and different things in the community. But
schools,
but voting, like just showing up to vote, for example, is like something that's how they did their voting, was by coming in together in a group. But there's different ways to do it nowadays, voting by mail or all these different things, but to actually show up and do it, be involved.
I think it's and I love Laura started in verse 5. I'm going to read the last part of verse 5, speaking here because they were dealing with a dispute with Mosiah that was wanting political power, wanting to change the ways things were, and the people had to get involved for the right decision to come forth. But I love what it says here: in separate bodies, having much dispute and wonderful contentions one with another. I think it's important to acknowledge that there is no one-way answer for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Members of the restored gospel come from lots of backgrounds.
Yeah.
We have lots of differences in opinions, lots of different ideas in how things should be run and governed, and that's okay. That's beautiful.
That's good.
That's a really good, and I love that little phrase, which I think is almost like it's almost poetic. It's so beautiful. Wonderful contentions. I wish that we could see our differences as wonderful contentions while we acknowledge our similarities, and that is the right to freedom, the right to ideas, the right to expressing those things. I mean, we assembled. They assembled according to their mind, the thoughts that they had. So then let's continue reading, because this next kind of verse is kind of what hits home this subject. And thus they did assemble themselves together to cast in their voices concerning the matter, and they were laid before the judges. In verse 7, and it came to pass that the voice of the people came against Amlici, and he was not made king over the people. So by good people getting involved, and that's differences of opinions. That's not just like a swarm of people all with the same opinion.
Thing, yeah.
That was just good people getting involved in local and community decisions, and ultimately the right decision was made. And I just, there's a lot we could talk about with this, but I think we kind of hit home that one, freedom needs to be protected. That's been ever since this country was set up. Freedom needs to be protected. And it is protected by good people expressing their voices, nominating good people to continue to hold the freedoms that are in place, and just getting involved in our local and in our state and in our national decisions.
What's the phrase I've heard it said that the way Satan can win is by getting good men to do nothing?
Ooh.
Where it's not necessarily people doing bad things, but when good men do nothing, that's when he also gets powerful. And so if we just stand up and do something, whatever, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to look differently no matter where, or depending on where you live or your situation, what you can do to kind of be part of this, but do something. You know,
Laura and I probably aren't the best examples of political involvement and community involvement. We try. We try our best to join the caucus meetings, coach baseball teams, and just getting involved with the community in lots of ways. But I'd like to hear from you. What are ways that you think we can get involved into?
Ideas.
Yeah, what ideas can we get involved in the community more? What can we... Let's just get some groupthink on this. What are some ideas of how we can get involved? We'd love to see your comments below.